Dricus du Plessis successfully defeats Sean Strickland 50-45 in the main event. I think a lot of us predicted DDP to win. I said, this rematch is going to be more decisive than the last one, and that turned out to be true. And the main thing we all kind of talked about was that Sean Strickland just doesn't change up his game plan for shit. He just doesn't. He fights the way he fights. I think both of them are kind of like this, but DDP kind of proved me wrong. I thought DDP would fight a lot more similar to the way he fought last time. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But no, he made up even more adjustments off the last fight, and he got the dominant performance because of that. There's a lot of things he changed that I thought worked really well. He outstruck Strickland for the first time. I don't think the first match anybody really outstruck anybody. If anything, Strickland outstruck du Plessis with more cleaner shots. I think du Plessis just had the output. But this time, Dricus was outlanding Strickland consistently. He was using the lead high kick that looked lightning quick. I think that was a huge thing that they implemented into this fight, was that lead high kick. He was using it in the first fight, but this time he was like spamming it, especially in the beginning, and it was landing. Strickland just didn't see it. The way Strickland blocks things, it's easy for it to kind of land because he stretches his arms out and the high kick goes around the guard. So I think that was a huge improvement that Dricus's team did, was that lead high kick. Something that I thought they would do that they didn't really do, two things actually, was the takedowns. We saw like one takedown, I think maybe in the second or third round, and that was it. We didn't see any more takedowns from there. I thought that it would do him well to mix in the takedowns, but I guess they didn't want to do that. The other thing that I thought was money for both of these fighters were the body shots. I thought that if they mixed in the body shots, especially, DDP to do it to Strickland, because Strickland, he leans back. The only thing to really hit is his body. It's really hard to get to his head. DDP didn't really use that many body shots. He really just completely figured out how to land on Strickland. I think this is the first time anybody other than Alex Pereira has learned how to actually hit Strickland clean on the face, but they both have different ways of doing it. You saw when Pereira did it, he just set up the low body jab on Strickland. Strickland lowered his hands, boom, left hook. DDP did it way differently. He didn't use any body shots to lower the hands of Strickland. He just went over and around the guard. He was literally going on his tippy toes and reaching over Strickland's guard. And his punch still did insane damage. He literally broke Strickland's nose. That's something we'll talk about too. Strickland's nose got broken badly, an actual break in the middle of the fight. You could see the punch kind of land, but then you saw him touch his nose and then he started walking backwards. And I thought a TKO was about to happen. DDP started to swarm him. I think the reason he did that was he was just trying to put the nose back in place, or he was just in shock from basically his nose being broken by a punch. But that just goes to show how fucking heavy DDP punches, dude. The way he fights, you don't really think that he would be that hard of a puncher. He's not like a Topuria who's super tight. His punches are really close to his body. He turns over. DDP doesn't really turn over. He just barrels down. I think the reason his punches are so strong is just because he's running at you while he's punching you. And yeah, the power was a huge thing too. I think Strickland, like I said in the breakdown, I just don't think Strickland had, a clear other way to win. I don't think even if he changed his game plan up, he would have been able to beat Dricus. I think the matchup is just insanely hard for him. The way he's been fighting over these years just doesn't really work on a guy like DDP who pushes the pace, who has a crazy output. Strickland just wasn't able to defend everything, and he wasn't able to get his own strikes going. He was throwing jab. The game plan of the coach of Eric Nixick was to use the right hand, because Strickland usually just uses his jab. He'll use his jab, he'll double it up a little bit. And Eric Nixick was trying to get him to throw the right hand. And that's what I thought would be in their game plan, was body shots and following up your jab. But Strickland just couldn't follow up the jab, man. I mean, he was landing it a little bit, but it just wasn't doing that much damage. He wasn't landing clean. And when he did land clean, it was on the top of DDP's head. It just wasn't a clean shot. And I think Strickland honestly was just getting discouraged. I think after the third round, especially after the nose break, he just honestly kind of just gave up. He had nothing. He really had nothing. And, he tried to do some things. He did. He tried to mix in the body. He did actually land a little bit of body shots. I thought that was a good game plan, but he just didn't throw enough. That's the problem with Strickland. He just doesn't, I don't know what his problem is. He had so much cardio. He was in way better condition through the entire fight than DDP because he just wasn't working as hard. DDP was giving it his all every single round. Strickland looked honestly almost fresh at the end of the fight other than like the damage that he's absorbed. Like cardio wise, he wasn't like exhausted, you know? I don't know why. Like when Chael Sonnen said that Sean Strickland was the most hungry for a bell he's ever seen, you would not be able to tell that watching that fight. That looked like he just went into, like he woke up fucking late and came to his gym, fucking hung over to spar. That's literally what it looked like. Sean Strickland did not, it literally looked like he gave no effort. And that's kind of his style, I realize that, but like you're in a title fight, you already fought the guy. You know that style doesn't work. Try something else at least. And Strickland just didn't do that. I think a lot of the cope too. Strickland was coping after that loss. He said the only reason he lost was because the cut over his eye. So I think he's like lying to himself. He's not trying to improve anything. He thought that he won the fight. And he tried to do the same thing against a legit champion who improves on his mistakes and is looking to get better. And that's why DDP's champion, because he's making those improvements. Strickland's not. And DDP won the fight because of that. You know, I think it's a big physicality thing too. Strickland does not eat punches as well as Dricus. Nowhere near the output. Nowhere near the power of DDP. So that's basically how I saw the fight. I didn't see any round to give to Strickland. I thought DDP won the first round, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And he did it all without wrestling, which is the thing that surprised me the most. You would think that DDP would go for a takedown because he landed 6 the other fight. You know, I thought that he would actually try to work on controlling Strickland more on the ground because that's a clear way to get a finish. I think that was an easier way to get a finish than a finish on the feet. But, you know, DDP did not do that, and he outstruck Strickland clearly on the feet. And it was a different kind of fight. I thought it would be more like a little more sloppy, but it wasn't like that. It was a little more tit for tat. Like Strickland would throw a punch, then DDP would throw a punch. It wasn't just like a brawl the entire time, kind of like the last fight. But yeah, DDP defeated Sean Strickland very handily. He looked like a champion out there. He proved why, you know, he's better than everyone else, except for maybe Khamzat Chimaev. That's the thing I'm going to talk about next. The next matchup is clearly Khamzat Chimaev. It should have been Khamzat Chimaev. That kind of proved why, because we know Strickland, or at least I knew Strickland wouldn't probably beat Dricus du Plessis. And you have a guy that's clearly the most dangerous guy in the division waiting in the wings. That's Khamzat Chimaev. And now the fight's finally going to happen. There's no one else for Dricus du Plessis except for Khamzat Chimaev. I want to talk about that fight a little bit. Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis. Hopefully this fight takes place before Abu Dhabi. I don't want to wait an entire year for Abu Dhabi. But the matchup for Khamzat Chimaev, I know a lot of people are saying, you know, Khamzat's just going to maul Dricus in one. And my opinion isn't changing much after the Dricus du Plessis fight. I'm not getting biased. This isn't recency bias because of the DDP win. But I can't help but think when I'm watching, you know, DDP, and then I'm thinking of Khamzat Chimaev's older fights. His fight against Kamaru Usman and his fight against Gilbert Burns. Those are the ones that stick out to me. He has trouble if he can't get the finish in the first round. He really does. You can blame it on whatever. You can blame the Gilbert Burns on, you know, Khamzat being 170. His cardio wasn't as good, training to 170. His chin wasn't as good, down to 170. His game plan wasn't that good, striking with Gilbert Burns and kind of getting into a brawl. But regardless, you've seen him struggle going into the later rounds in a third round fight. You've seen him struggle with Kamaru Usman, who is a lot more dangerous of a fight than Gilbert Burns, but he still struggled. And you can blame it on the broken hand or whatever, but regardless, he couldn't get the finish on Kamaru Usman in the first round. That had nothing to do with his broken hand. So what happens when he fights Dricus du Plessis, who's much bigger than Gilbert Burns, much bigger than Kamaru Usman, the champion, not on short notice, 5 rounds. What happens if DDP is able to survive the first round or the second round against Khamzat Chimaev? I think we can all agree that Dricus du Plessis is much more durable than a Gilbert Burns and then Kamaru Usman. He's much bigger than Kamaru Usman. He's much bigger than Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns 5'8" on a lucky day. Maybe 180 pounds on fight night? DDP is practically the size of Khamzat Chimaev, if not bigger. He's definitely more tanky. He's definitely more, you know, beefy. I think that a takedown on Dricus du Plessis is going to be much more difficult than anybody, with the exception of maybe Kamaru Usman. Because DDP is not like Robert Whittaker. He's not going to run away from Khamzat when Khamzat shoots a takedown. He's going to meet him in the middle. He's going to try to sprawl on him. He's going to try to wrestle with Khamzat. And I just don't see, you know, Khamzat being able to just clearly like pull off something that he did against Whittaker. You know, Whittaker's just not durable at all. He's not going to be able to put a neck crank on Dricus du Plessis and make him tap. I don't see that happening. I think Dricus is going to be able to defend a lot of the submission attempts of Khamzat Chimaev in the first round. That's the way I see it going. We're not going to see Khamzat try to strike with DDP. We're going to see him shoot for the legs again. And I think DDP is going to wrestle him. And I think Khamzat Chimaev is probably going to end out on top. But I think DDP can survive. And I'm really interested in seeing the later rounds between Khamzat Chimaev and DDP. And then another thing to question is Khamzat going to show up 100%? Every single fight, he has something going on. He either breaks his hand during the fight, or he's battling some sickness during the fight camp. He's almost wanting to pull out. You know, he has half of a fucking thyroid or something like that. Like, this dude's immune system is sketchy. He's getting all these sicknesses during his fight camp. We might never see an 100% Khamzat Chimaev ever again. And if there's not 100% Khamzat Chimaev going against DDP, I'm going to have a hard time picking him. Right now, I still think Khamzat Chimaev is probably going to beat Dricus du Plessis, but if DDP beats Khamzat Chimaev, the only fight left for DDP is against Alex Pereira. And you know what? I think that if Alex Pereira beats Ankalaev like I'm predicting him to do, especially by knockout, they're not going to move Alex Pereira up to heavyweight just yet. Even if John Jones doesn't fight, they don't want to ruin their star like that. That's a risky fight for Alex Pereira against a guy like Tom Aspinall. I think the much bigger fight is DDP if he beats Khamzat to go up and fight Pereira. There's already been talks about it. You know, there's a little bit of a storyline there, and that would be a sick fight. I think Pereira would smoke him easily. I just think, like, DDP style, especially up at 205, is just not going to work on Pereira. It's just not. But that's a huge fight to make. And if he beats Khamzat Chimaev, dude, like, I would put DDP at like 4 or 3 pound for pound if he beats Khamzat Chimaev. And then you make that fight between Alex Pereira and DDP. Huge fight. I think there's a lot of potential for DDP now. He's kind of cleared out a decent amount of his division other than Khamzat Chimaev. You know, so that's my take on this fight. I thought this was actually a pretty entertaining fight. I thought it was more entertaining than the first one. I'm not a big fan of this sloppy, tired, you know, labored strikes. And that wasn't really this fight this time around. It was a little more technical. It was a little more, you know, you saw a little more juice on DDP's kicks and punches. And I really enjoyed it. There's some other fights on this card I want to talk about. Actually, just one fight on this card. Well, I'll say 2. First one I want to talk about, Alexandre Topuria. He really proved himself. I was scared that, you know, the cans that he was beating up just made him look really good. He looks just like his brother. He fights just like his brother. His takedown, that suplex, was the fight of the highlight of his fight. That was sick, dude. That was sick. His striking looks crisp. He was fucking going to the body. And I liked that it went to decision. I actually did. You know, you got to see a lot of his, you know, tool bag. You had to make sure, like, this guy didn't just get a lucky knockout. You know what I mean? And then he just gets a fight against a high-level guy and he gets fraud checked. I don't think that's going to happen. Do I think Topuria is going to beat a Merab? I don't know yet, because to beat Merab, I think you got to knock Merab out. We haven't seen a knockout from Topuria yet. His power, it seems like his power is there. The body shots were clearly affecting Thicknesse. And Colby Thicknesse is actually like a solid person to debut against. This guy is actually good. He's a very good fighter. He trains with Volk. You know, he's not some scrub. So I think that was a huge, huge opportunity for Alexandre Topuria. He passed the test. He looked great. I'm really excited to see him against some of these fighters once he works his way up. I want to see his next fight. I think he should get booked soon. Probably on the card with Topuria. If they're doing it in Spain or whenever Topuria fights next, that would be a great time to see both those brothers fight. Last thing I'll talk about is the co-main event, Weili Zhang versus Tatiana Suarez. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I didn't even predict this fight, but I had my predictions, and it was Tatiana Suarez to win. She didn't win, dude. And I think I got persuaded by the whole wrestling background. Oh, you know, her wrestling is just so great. She's such a dominant wrestler. She's just going to hold Weili down. That didn't happen, dude. Her wrestling did not look that good. She didn't look as strong as I thought she would be. Weili Zhang just stuffed all of her takedowns. She boxed the shit out of Tatiana Suarez. Just dirty boxing up in the clinch, just tight punches. She rocked Tatiana Suarez on multiple occasions. She just dominated her everywhere. I think Weili should go up, you know, to 25. I really think so, because I don't think there's any other interesting fights at 115 right now. Maybe Valentina Shevchenko versus Manrot or whatever, however you pronounce her name, the French girl. And then you do Weili Zhang versus Shevchenko if she wins, or whoever the winner of that fight is. I think that's a fight you want. people want to see. I would actually tune into that fight. I would actually care about that fight if I saw that. You know, I think it's time you do some big fights between these girls because no one's watching the regular fights. Like, let's just be real. So yeah, Weili Zhang, I mean, she looked insane. Great performance by every champion. That's my breakdown of this card. Let me know what you guys think about this card. I think it actually performed well for how bad it seemed before the card started. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.